I have to make sure my Tower Hill women's logo is showing. So plug for the conference. Come, ladies. It's really going to be great. We'll miss you if you're not there. So you may be wondering how I came to be standing before you here today. So here's how that went down. I was at the men's conference refilling bowls for toppings for the ice cream bar when Pastor Gary came over and said hello. And then he said, "Hey, I have something to ask you." And he started backing up. And I'm like, okay. How would you like to speak on Mother's Day? Gulp. Now, you know the emoji with the eyeballs this big? Yeah, that was my face. My first thought was, no, thank you. But I could never say no to Pastor Gary, and thank you for the opportunity. So happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out here, past, present, and future. Today's a day to celebrate biological, adoptive, and spiritual moms, and just anyone who steps into the role of mother. So today we remember that God sees your work, your prayers, and your love, and that He has a plan for both you and the children that you touch. So before I get started, I want to recognize that this can be a really difficult day for a lot of women for a lot of reasons. There are those who desperately want to be a mother, and that hasn't happened yet. There are those like me who have lost your mom. My mom would be so proud to see me up here today, but I'm not going to cry. And those who are estranged from their own mother, or maybe their child, it's a tricky day, and I want you to know that we see you. And God sees you. So Jeremiah 29:11-13 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call on me and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." God has a plan for you and your children. God is sovereign, even when the path feels uncertain. Motherhood comes with unexpected detours. We all know that, but God's plan is greater than our fears. So our responsibility is to trust in His promise and to raise our kids with that same trust. When you need encouragement, remember that you're not raising your kids alone. You're partnering with the God who has already written their future. So a bit about me. I'm married to Dave. I was going to say Death Star Dave, but honestly, I need his support, so I'm going to pay for that. We have 4 grown boys, 2 awesome daughters-in-laws, and 5 grandkids. I teach first grade, so you guys are really scary to me. Like 6-year-olds are good. And we've been coming to Tower Hill for about 25 years now. So when I think of Mother's Day and moms in general, I tend to have this vision of a mom chasing toddlers around, younger kids, that chaotic time of life, just trying to keep your head above water some days, and some days survival is your only goal. Been there. I recall one day when my boys were young, and my boys are probably over there really scared right now. They were around 6, 3, and 3, and it was about 6 a.m., and I hear the death scream. You know, the scream you don't ignore? So I run into Nick and Josh's room, only to find Nick screaming, blood everywhere, and Josh with the "I didn't do it" look on his face. So the boys had been jumping on their bed. Nick fell, hit his mouth, and his teeth actually went through his lip. Really gross. So I grab a cloth, an ice pack, call the pediatrician, who says, "Come on in." So now I'm just out of bed, so my hair's going everywhere. Nick slips out here. Get the kids in the family truckster. We go to the pediatrician's office, only to be told that we're not going to stitch it. He'll be fine. Take him home. So we head home with the plan to have a low-key day. Ever have that plan, moms? How'd that work out for you? So it was until about 1 o'clock when, again, I hear the death scream. Only this time it's from Zach. So Zach's screaming, and Josh has the "I didn't do it" look on his face. So you know those rip cords for those SSP cars? I might be dating myself here, I probably am, but they had jagged edges and you'd rev the wheels. So Zach thought it would be a good idea to put that in his mouth and clench down. Josh saw an opportunity. So Josh took the rip cord. Yeah, so again, blood everywhere and Zach's teeth going everywhere. So again, more blood. A couple of teeth going sideways, and we're off to the dentist. So I load the 3 kids in the car again. We're off to the dentist's office. We get there. Nick with his lip out to here, Zach with his teeth going everywhere. And I tell the dentist about our morning, hoping he believes me and that he's not going to call DCYF on me. So our kids keep our lives interesting, don't they? So although I have a vision of younger moms, the word mom means a lot of different things for me. For me, I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother, I'm an aunt, I'm a mother-in-law. Mother-in-laws get a bad rap. So this morning, I'd like to begin talking about a woman named Ruth. I'm sure many of you are familiar with her story, but I'd like to touch upon some key points that I feel are important. Ruth remains loyal to her mother-in-law, Naomi, after the death of her husband and in-laws. Naomi decides to return to her homeland of Bethlehem alone. However, Ruth insists on going with her and adopting Naomi's God as her own. The book of Ruth tells us a beautiful story about love, loyalty, and God's faithfulness. Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law, had lost everything: her husband, her 2 sons, and her livelihood. What she didn't lose was her daughter-in-law, Ruth, who would turn out to be one of her biggest blessings. In Ruth 1:8, Naomi releases Ruth, telling her daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and me." Ruth has no responsibility to Naomi, but in Ruth 1:16, we see the love that Ruth has for Naomi in her response. Ruth 1:16 says, "Don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." But Ruth was willing to sacrifice her future for Naomi's best interest. She was willing to suffer with Naomi in her grief, all the while suffering grief, experiencing her own grief at the loss of her husband. Ruth and Naomi's journey demonstrates God's provision and the unexpected ways he works in our lives. The book of Ruth can encourage us to reflect on the importance of love, loyalty, and the many ways which mothers, biological or otherwise, shape our lives. Another mother I'd like to talk about is Jochebed, the mother of Moses. Her story reminds us that God uses mothers in a powerful and sometimes hidden way. A new king had come into power in Egypt and was concerned that the Israelites were becoming too numerous. So in order to control this, the king told the Hebrew midwives to kill all the baby boys. The midwives, however, feared God and didn't comply with this order. So in Exodus 1:22, Pharaoh gave this order to all of his people: "Every Hebrew boy that is born you must throw into the Nile. Let every girl live." Exodus 2:1-3 says, "Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got up a pious basket for him, coated it with tar and pitch. She placed the child in it, put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile." Jochebed teaches us that a mother's bravery and faith in God can protect a child's destiny. Hebrews 11:23 tells us, "By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born because they saw that he was no ordinary child, and they were not afraid of the king's edict." Jochebed's actions weren't just motivated by motherly instinct. They were rooted in faith. She trusted in God when the situation seemed hopeless and obeyed when she didn't know how things would turn out. How many times do we do that? And I'm actually questioning myself here. God uses faith-filled obedience to accomplish his plans, often through ordinary people who simply trust him. So moms, your faith matters. When you pray and teach and model and trust in God, even when outcomes are uncertain, you're planting seeds that God can grow into mighty things. The story continues in Exodus 2:7-10. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse your baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. God used Jochebed's brief but impactful time with Moses to shape his destiny. Moms, never underestimate your influence, whether your kids are young or old, like mine. Your words are shaping them in ways that you may never see. Now, I hadn't originally planned on getting into my personal testimony, but then a few weeks ago, Pastor Tony spoke, and he shared and reminded me that our personal testimony is the most powerful tool that we have. Every time I share this, I'm in awe of how many Ruths I've had in my life, and by what I mean by that is how many people have walked with me through hard times. So I was 28 years old, pregnant with twins, and after an extremely difficult pregnancy, 3 months bed rest, hospital stays, all of it, I delivered healthy, identical twin boys. We can finally regroup and regain some control over our lives. That's what we were thinking. That is not what happened. So I was discharged from the hospital, although I didn't feel very well. I felt like something was wrong, but I didn't know what was wrong. But I was reassured that soon you're going to be back on your feet. It's all good. So we were excited to go home and introduce our 3-year-old Zach to his new baby brothers. Zach had become the dethroned king. So that night, I went to bed and I woke up and I simply couldn't breathe. So we went to the ER, and again, we were reassured that everything's good, you're fine, you're overwhelmed. Okay, we'd go back to the ER 3 times in 3 days. On the 3rd trip, which happened to be Easter Sunday, the doctors did a chest x-ray, and they found that my heart was enlarged and surrounded by fluid. So they knew something was very wrong, but they didn't know what was wrong. So they did lung scans, they did all kinds of things that night. So I was admitted and put in a room. And about 2 in the morning, I was staring at the ceiling. Fear took over. And my nurse came in. Now, I have a family of nurses, so I know how valuable and limited their time is, really. And this nurse simply sat with me. She asked me about my family. She reassured me, she encouraged me, and she said, don't worry, the doctor's going to figure this out. The next morning, additional testing would confirm a severe case of cardiomyopathy, heart failure. So I had an ejection fraction of 12. At 10, you go to the top of the transplant list. So I was pretty sick. So they sent me to CICU, and after a week there, I was sent home, but I really couldn't do anything. I had these 2 newborns. I couldn't hold them. I couldn't feed them. And again, yes, I was scared. I had thoughts like, who's going to bake cupcakes for my babies to bring to school on their birthdays? And during this time, there were so many people, in addition to my mom and my mother-in-law, who helped us navigate this new path we were on. Moms from church would come pick up Zach and take him to the playground, pick him up for a play date. A woman who I didn't know very well, named Joanne from our church, arranged for a month's worth of meals for us. She also volunteered to come over and sit with me 3 days a week. Now, I was a little unsure at this time because I didn't know her very well, and I was wondering if that would be uncomfortable for me. But God orchestrates things in ways we may not fully understand at the time. So Joanne and I ended up having a lot in common. She had 3-year-old twin grandchildren. She shared with me how the Lord carried her through the loss of her 8-year-old daughter. And during this time, so many people stepped forward to help where needed, to mother me, to mother my children. And within 6 months, I made a complete recovery. My cardiologist says I'm a miracle, that I should not be here. Praise God for that one. So I'm thankful to all of those who stepped forward to mother us. So fast forward to 2004, and our kids are now 12, 9, and 9. Dave received orders that he was going to deploy to Iraq for 12 months. Now, during this period, the orders changed. At one point, they bumped up to 18 months. That's a long time, girls. And then they went down. I think it ended up being about 15 months. But about a week before he deployed, we were sitting, actually, row 5, right where Sue's sitting, and it was Christmas Eve. And the boys had their collared shirts and ties on, looking like shiny pennies. And we sang Christmas carols, and we held candles. And friends and well-wishers said goodbye to Dave. But inside, we were all broken. We avoided at all costs the elephant in the room. Would Dave come home to us? Would this be the last Christmas Eve we spent as a family? I told myself I wasn't going to cry. So Dave left, and the chaos began. Okay, school, rangers, skiing, all of it. 3 kids, they kept me busy, but busy was good. I was committed to keeping the boys' lives as normal as possible, and that was busy. And I'm going to be really transparent here for a moment. During that time, I felt that church was the most difficult place for me to be, because at church, I was forced to be still and trust in God. One of my favorite scriptures is Psalm 46:10, which in part states, "Be still and know that I am God." It was at church that I was vulnerable. It was at church that I realized, or I had to face the fact that I had so little control over my own life. And it was at church I also realized that my attitude set the tone for my family. If I was going to live in fear, so would my boys. If I chose to be angry, so would my boys. And if I chose to fall apart, so would they. So I decided we'd spend the next year doing all the things we normally did. Rangers on Wednesdays, skiing on Fridays, camping in the summer. Now, Dave was among the first soldiers over there, so communication systems hadn't really been set up yet. There was no email, there were no phone calls. We used snail mail. And it would take about 2 weeks for a letter to get back and forth. At some point, that stuff was up and running, and we'd get the occasional phone call or email. So at one point, we went 6 weeks with no communication. So during this time, there were so many people who loved and supported us, not just moms. Some of them are sitting in this room. But I would receive cards from a woman named Pat Reinhardt, who would simply write, "Thinking of you, love, Pat." My friend would drive the kids to youth group or call to tell me to send the boys over to play. She invited us to the movies. And she gave me a coupon book. She created this, and I still have this actually. And it was good for things like pool time, childcare, rides. And there was one coupon for unlimited husband duties. Certain restrictions apply. So there were teachers who offered to babysit and simply loved my kids while they were at school. There were ranger leaders who encouraged me to let Zach go winter camping in northern Maine when the temperatures were supposed to be below 0. I was an overprotective mom. And before I share this next part, I have to introduce this because some of you younger people are not going to know what this is. This is a flip phone. I'm Brighton's clapping. This is what we used to use, and we would use for phone calls, right? Hello. But on the front, there's this tiny little screen. It's not even an inch wide, really, and it would show the digital time on it. So my flip phone, and this is my original, actually. So then there was the text. The first text I ever received before I knew what texting was, really. I had never experienced a text before. So Dave had been deployed for about 7 months, and I was over it. I was done. And we were camping at Point Sebago in Maine. And it was around midnight, and I walked Nick to the bathroom. So I am outside, beautiful, starry night, and I'm trying not to cry. And I'm praying to God, give me the strength to do this. Because at that point, I think I had another 9 or 10 months to go. It was long. And I heard this bling! And I looked around in the darkness to see if anyone was there. And then I looked down at my phone, and I simply see, "I love you." Now I stood there frozen for a minute, thinking, did God seriously just send me a message? And I didn't want to open my phone because I was afraid it would go away, and I was thinking, nobody is going to believe this. But I did open it, and it just said, Dave, on the inside. So that is how I was introduced to text messages. God's perfect timing again, right? So I want to go back to the part where I said I was over it. So I have been a single mom probably a total of 2.5 years between the deployments. And playing the roles of both mom and dad is hard. And single moms, you are rock stars, absolute rock stars. I share all this to drive home the point that we mother the people around us. We might not remember these encounters, but they do. I remember everyone. I might not remember that nurse's face, that one that sat with me. I remember her face. I don't remember her name, and that's okay, but I remember the kindness that she showed me. So as mothers, we mother in different ways. We pour into the kids that come to us, right? Whether you volunteer in nursery, kids' church, whatever you do. Opportunities are everywhere. So as a teacher, I have the opportunity to do a lot of mothering. First graders, they're fun, they're silly, and they're happy, but big things happen in their little lives. Their dogs cross the rainbow bridge. Their grandparents and sometimes parents pass away. They battle cancer. And at times they simply want to know why they can't do something that everyone else can, like read. And in that moment, all that matters to those kids is what's going on in the moment. And that's where the mothering comes in. I can teach them their math lesson tomorrow. Right now, I need to make sure that they're okay and that they're loved. There's a quote by Maya Angelou that I put on the top of my letter to new students every day. And it states, I've learned that people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And there is a lot of truth to that. If you think back in your own lives of how you feel when you're with certain people, you remember. So if you volunteer anywhere, nursery, kids' church, anywhere with kids, you're going to mother. You may have nieces, nephews, neighborhood kids, you're friends of your kids. There will always be teachable moments. At times, kids just need some love, or they need a safe place to land, and that might be your kitchen table. I think moms have it harder today than I did. We didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Instagram and social media to tell us to portray this perfect motherly life, right? So if you could cue that first picture, I don't know if these pictures will come up. Okay, so my family doesn't have any of the perfect pictures because my family is a bunch of goofballs. We're sarcastic, we goof around, and I can never get everybody just looking at the camera smiling. So we tried it with the grandkids, that didn't work either. So little David was having no part of this, and that's the best picture. We actually had a photographer taking these. That was the best picture we got. This is more the reality. Can you cue the next one? Okay. You turn your head on toddlers and it goes south. So here's what I see when I see this messy macaroni and cheese, and that's Nick and Josh and my niece Jen. Motherhood can be messy, both physically and metaphorically, but within that mess is the cackling laugh of a toddler or a baby reaching out to you for comfort. Find peace in those moments. Find the joy. Sometimes it's hidden among the chaos of toddlers with mac and cheese on their heads, or it may be hidden within a pile of laundry, but it's there if you look. In this season, you're like the CEO of a small but very important company called family. Remember that God has carefully pieced your life together. The children that he places with you are exactly where they're supposed to be. So when we wonder why certain things are happening in our lives or in the lives of our children, God knows. And how awesome is it that he chose us to navigate that with him? He didn't choose anyone else, he chose you. The good, the hard, the challenges. What an honor. So when something unexpected happens with your child, an unexpected diagnosis, illness, problems at school, crashing the family truck, not you. Remember that you were given the opportunity to walk this path with this child, and you with Jesus by your side are your child's superpower. You're the one that's going to advocate and push until they get the answers, the care that they deserve. And this may be your most powerful testimony, an opportunity to share Jesus with a stranger or speak life to a person that's just beginning their journey down a path that you've already been down. These children that we care for, every one of them, they're worth it. Jesus left us an advocate, didn't he? John 14:16 says, "And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to help you and be with you forever." We serve an awesome God. Now, I've always thought that being a K-1-2 teacher, that I would never be that teacher that they wrote their college essay about or that impacted their life in a mighty way. But I misjudged them. These kids remember. Last year, we always have seniors come back to their elementary schools right before graduation. So last year, a bunch of kids come in, a bunch of boys who were way bigger than I am now. They ran and they sat on my kindergarten carpet and they said, "Read us a story." They even knew which story they wanted. So yes, they remember. They might be 5, they might be 6, but the way you make them feel, they'll remember that. And sometimes that might be all they have to hang on to. That high school kid, the one who may have been a little naughty growing up and had a difficult home life, they come back and visit too. They visit a place where they once felt safe. I'm not saying this is an easy task, it's not. But take faith in knowing that there's a plan for you and your children of all ages. I'd like to talk for a minute about what I refer to as the switch. It's that time in your life when you suddenly find yourself caring for the person or people that have spent their lives caring for you. So I'll share my experiences. So my dad was one of the kindest people that you could ever meet, and he never gave up the role of caretaker. As a grown adult, if it was snowing, my phone would ring at 6 in the morning, and my dad would say, "Donna, it's snowing out. You want me to bring you and the boys to school?" I'd be like, "Dad, I'm 40 and school's a mile away." But I always knew there would come a day where it would be snowing and my phone wouldn't ring and I would be heartbroken. And I was. So as my dad did his slow dance with Alzheimer's for about 5 years, there came a time where I did take on the role of caretaker. And the energy I once put into my own kids, I was now putting into my dad. A former assistant principal of mine once shared that attitude is everything. If you find yourself having to do something unpleasant, say, "I get to do this," not "I have to do this." I get to go to another meeting today, not "I have to go to another meeting today." Change your mindset. Also, keep in mind that all of these things that you don't want to do or you see as a burden may be the very things that someone else is praying for. So about a year after my dad passed, my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and once again, I'm in the role of caretaker. And as she passed 3 months later, it was a privilege to take care of my parents. I'm not saying it was easy or that I was always as patient as I should have been. I wasn't. But as our own moms age, do we consider how we care for them? Do we give them the time that they deserve? Do we honor them when they no longer have anything to give back to us? My point in sharing this is that we continue to mother in different ways throughout our lives. Actually, we never stop mothering. And as I was pondering what stories to share this morning, I couldn't help but feel very blessed. I have prayed for each of the people that I love the most in this world. I've prayed for peace, strength, and their survival. There was a time that losing each of them was a very real possibility. In 2010, keeping it together here, our son Zach, who was 19, joined the Army. So we sent him off to basic training in May. In early September, Dave left for deployment number 2, a year in Kuwait. And in December, Zach came home on leave. And if you know Zach, he's a funny guy, right? Nothing's ever serious with Zach, kind of like me. So he came home and he said, "So, I'm taking a little vacation. Now, my first thought was, not until you pay me back the money I just paid to send all your stuff home. But I kept it together. But in a snarky voice, I did say, where are you going? He simply replied, Afghanistan. 2 weeks later, Zach was on a plane going to war. He'd spent a year there, and this was the first of 2 deployments, rough deployments, to Afghanistan. So now Dave is in Kuwait, Zach's in Afghanistan, and I'm home with 2 16-year-olds taking driver's ed. So who are you going to feel bad for, right? So jump ahead a few years, and our son Josh has his lower leg amputated after multiple failed surgeries. So this was a good thing and an answer to our prayers. And you might be thinking, what do you pray for? But God answers prayers in ways that we don't expect and ways that don't make sense at the time. And he also answers them in his time, not ours. So now jump ahead to 2021. Remember COVID? Okay. So our son Nick landed in ICU for Christmas with a severe case of COVID. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks. And the day he was to be released, they found that he had bilateral pulmonary embolisms. So you might be thinking, boy, she's speaking so casually about all of this. But let me tell you, when Dave and Zach were deployed, and when Dr. Smith called us at Mass General in the waiting room to say, we're done, the amputation is complete. And when Dr. Stahl called to say, we're moving Nick to ICU tonight because we have a bed available, and we think we may need to vent him tonight, all I could do was turn it over to God and say, God, you are in control. It's what we have to do. Nothing drops you to your knees faster than when someone you love is at risk, and there's only one thing you can do. Sometimes you have to surrender it all. Have you ever had that kid that asks a lot of questions? Okay, we did. Why can't we see God? How do snowmen walk? Is Daddy going to die? Some questions are easier than others to answer. Well, snowmen aren't real, and they can't walk. Go play, right? But some questions stop you in your tracks, and they need more time. They deserve more time. Is Daddy going to die? This is an opportunity to teach them what it means to fully trust in God. Get the worship team come, please. Thank you. We have an amazing worship team. So this is for the younger girls out there. Back in 2010, when both Dave and Zach were deployed, I came to church one Sunday, and there was an altar call. I went up to the altar because I simply felt overwhelmed. It wasn't long before I felt a hand on my shoulder and heard a familiar voice in my ear. 17-year-old Lauren, who I had known since she was very little, she knew why I was there, and she prayed with such conviction that morning. I was overwhelmed at the prospect of losing my son and or husband. I don't remember specifically what Lauren prayed for that morning, but I do remember leaving the altar with an I can do this attitude. And I can do this. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So young girls, don't ever feel like you can't step in due to your age, because sometimes your age will be the very thing that encourages someone. A mother's purpose goes beyond providing care. She's a teacher and a discipler. Go back to the story of Moses. His mother Jochebed courageously hid him from Pharaoh's order and ensured that his early years were spent learning about God's ways. Mothers have the incredible task of planting seeds of faith, integrity, and wisdom in their children. Every Bible story you read to them, every Christian song you play to them, every word you whisper over them, every word of encouragement is a building block in a child's spiritual future. It's their foundation. So moms, your prayers are powerful. Your intercession can shape and protect children and draw them closer to God. Your words, you might think, sometimes fall on deaf ears, but I don't believe they do. A mother's love is often the first glimpse a child gets of grace, forgiveness, and sacrifice. We all know stories or have personal experiences of moms who stood by their children through hardship, forgave mistakes, and offered second chances. This sacrificial love mirrors God's incredible love for us, a love that is patient, enduring, and without end. So to all the mothers here today, thank you for your sacrifices, your prayers, and your wisdom. Whether you feel weak or strong today, know that your purpose is sacred and that you are seen and loved. Be faithful where God has placed you, for He knows the plans for you, and they are good. Thank you.
What an awesome message. Amen. Oh, Father, we just thank you today for moms that have poured into the lives of their children. Father, I thank you, Lord, that I look back and I think of my mom and how she poured into my life. And I thank you for it. And Lord, I thank you for those who've been mentors in my life. Father, I just give you praise. I give you glory. And Father, I pray on this Mother's Day, God, that you would just bless moms, bless them in a special way. Father, and those who desire to be moms and haven't been able to have children, God, would you just touch them on today? Lord, they are seen. They are loved. And Father, they would just look to you for strength and encouragement today. Father, just touch your people right now in this room. Ask it in Jesus' mighty name. Would you stand with me all across this room this morning? Donna, thank you for sharing your story. If you notice the theme throughout that, her trust was in God. Her trust was in God. It wasn't in Donna. It was in God. And maybe you're here this morning and you haven't come to a place where you can trust God. You're struggling with trusting Him. You're struggling with letting go and saying, God, I'm just going to trust you. And if that's you this morning, we want to pray for you. You're struggling with just trusting God, and with your children, or maybe in your marriage, or maybe in your whatever situation you may be in, you're saying, I'm struggling with trust. If that's you, would you slip your hand up right where you are? I want to pray for you. Say, I'm struggling with trust. Yes, I see the hands back there. Over there, yes. Anyone else? Let's just pray right now. Father, you see the hands that were raised all across this auditorium. Father, people that said they're struggling with something of trusting you. God, I pray this morning, God, that you'd help them to just come to a place where they can just totally surrender to you and say, God, I can trust you and I will trust you. Father, even as of last night when I was reading in the book of Daniel, and Father, the 3 Hebrew children were given a second chance to bow down to Nebuchadnezzar's idol. But they said, O King, we're not going to bow down. Their trust was in God. They even said, our God is able to deliver us, but even if He doesn't, we still will not worship your God. And God, you delivered them. God, because they trusted in you. God, I pray, God, you'd help us as a church and individuals, Lord, just say, God, I trust you. I trust you with my family. I trust you to do what is right, oh God. I trust you to be there, oh God. To fill in the everything, God, that's lacking. Just, God, I trust you. Father, take all of me. I surrender to you. In Jesus' mighty name. In Jesus' mighty name. Hallelujah.